Hello, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time out of your busy schedule to share with us your experiences as a dyslexic person.
You're welcome. It's so nice to see you, Jess. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome. So Stephanie is also Super Dyslexia Girl. So sometimes you'll see her in various places wearing her cape and her costume. So Stephanie, do you want to tell us a little bit about your being Super Dyslexia Girl before?
Sure, I would love to. Yeah, it started in 2003. They have a parade called the Doodah Parade, and it's kind of an anti-parade in Pasadena. So they have one example, there's a lady that was dressed up like an oven mitt, and another guy dressed up like a big thing of pizza. So you can be whatever you want in this parade. And so I decided to enter it, and I was going to do it with other people, but no one ended up doing it. So I was by myself, and my best friend and I were brainstorming, and I said, well, I think I should be a superhero. And she's like, why don't you be your own superhero? And so I'm like, I'm going to be Dyslexia Girl. So I made my own costume. I had a Wonder Woman cape, and I put Super Dyslexia Girl on it. And then on the front, I just used tape and I put a D. And as I was walking around, people said, oh, your D is backwards. That's so cute. And I actually didn't even notice it was, but I put it on in a mirror. So it was backwards. And so I kind of kept that throughout. I've had 3 different costumes now, and I love going out and wearing it. It still makes me laugh because I think that will make me laugh, but also I think it's important to have superheroes. I think as a kid, I would have benefited from having a dyslexic superhero, someone else that can relate to me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's awesome that you do that as a service for other people.
Yeah.
To make them feel more inclusive.
Yeah, I think being inclusive. And the other part is I think you need to have it lighthearted. I think dyslexia can be hard and challenging. And so making it a little more lighthearted, I think is great, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree. So when did you discover that you were dyslexic?
I was actually my teacher, Miss Omura. She's amazing. She had me tested when I was 5. So I actually didn't pick up as quickly on first learning reading, like sight words and also following directions. And remembering short-term memory problems. And so she had me go, and this was a long time ago. So I actually was tested at my elementary school. The school psychologist tested me with the IQ test and some other tests. And they actually officially said I had dyslexia at that time, was actually in my IEP from when I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny how things went full circle from identifying to 30 years of keeping it hush hush, and now they're starting to little by little identify it again.
Yeah, that part of it is kind of interesting to me that long ago they actually said I had dyslexia, you know. now they don't say dyslexia, which is so weird to me. I mean, I don't know, that part of it is really interesting that it's come the opposite way, you know, of not identifying and having parents have to go privately and get them evaluated instead of the school saying you have dyslexia.
Yeah, well, it's politics.
Yeah.
But we won't get into that one on this.
No, we don't need to talk about that today.
No.
Another day, right?
Right, yeah. So what was it like for you in school as a child?
I would say when I was diagnosed, I went to kindergarten twice. That was the recommendation they had. And then I didn't actually receive support services, you know, just RSP until I was in 2nd grade. And so I struggled from doing kindergarten twice. And then 1st and 2nd grade, I really struggled. It took me about 4 hours a night doing homework, and I would sit there the whole time trying to do it. And so one of the accommodations they had was I didn't have to do as much homework. And then the spelling, I'm still horrible at spelling. And so the spelling was reduced. But I feel that In school, I think it was challenging. And I think too, the other part that they don't really talk about is the social part of it. I felt like because I went to a separate classroom for part of my classrooms, that I was really with other children and I didn't get the camaraderie of the students in the classroom. And so for a little bit in elementary school, I felt isolated. And I think on the playground, I was the kid that hung out with a noon duty aide, or I hang out with the boys because the girls were kind of mean to me. But then after I think the good part of it was that I learned how to make friends quickly. And so at my elementary school, all the new people, I was very welcoming to them. And I became friends with all the new people at my school I went to, because I went there for 10 years from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And I went to kindergarten twice. And so for me, I think a good skill to have is how to learn how to make friends and meet new people easily. And so that's the positive from it. And then the other positive, I think, is because I had to go to a different classroom, I learned time management at a very young age of how to manage my time.
Well, that's great, because a
Yeah.
lot of dyslexic people struggle greatly with time management.
Mm-hmm.
I have worked on that very much as an adult, but as a child, I think I was late for everything.
Well, I still have, I won't say it's like my gift, but I will say I did learn a lot of time management skills that it's not my strength, so I still have to work on it. But I think in elementary school, I really learned how to deal with that.
Well, that's great. You know, we learn good skills from our adversities.
We do for sure.
And so when you went to were ready to go to college, can you tell us a little bit about your college experience?
Sure, I'd love to. Since in high school, I was also in the resource program. I was in certain special classes and then regular classes. And so they actually took us to the disability service center at the community college. And there they showed us the center, and you end up, if you're going to go to the community college at that time, they did another IQ test on you to make sure that you qualified for the services. And so they did that. And then you take a half unit or unit class that's for the learning center. And so you're able to access all the tutoring available at the community college. And the tutoring is done by people who studied history. So the person might have their degree in history and then they tutor you. And then also you get time and a half on tests in a quiet environment if that's one of your accommodations. And that was really vital, I think, to my success. I will say that I also recommend not taking too many units your first semester. I took 15 and worked, and that was very stressful. I would say that didn't work that well for me. Plus, I was used to having really easy work because I was in resource in 2nd grade, and they didn't really require a lot of work from me. And so even in high school, the same thing. And so when I got to college, I was expected to do a lot more work. And so that part of it is that was hard and challenging, but I did it. And then I transferred to the University of Laverne. It's a small private college. And it was perfect for me. I studied child development, which was what I knew I wanted to do. And my classrooms, there was only 20 people in my major, my child development classes. And the biggest class I ever had was 50 people. And so I was able to talk to all my professors, and I knew them, and able to have that relationship. And they also had a learning center too. That learning center, I had time and a half on tests in a quiet environment. And then it was peer tutoring. So I even had one of my sorority sisters was my tutor. I think the one thing I would like to say too is that my grandmother bought me a laptop at that time, and that was in the 90s. Wow. And so I actually had a laptop that I brought to my tutoring. And this was before, I know all the young people watching this was before people had laptops that they brought to class. I know now it's everyone does, but at the time no one had a laptop, they all had desktops. And so for me, having the laptop and being able to bring it to tutoring and being able to do my work in the library where it's quiet, that was huge for me. And being able to have someone look over my work on my laptop and then be able to correct it right away made a huge difference in my success in college.
Now, did you also receive notes from class?
You know, that was one of my accommodations, was a note writer. And also my other accommodation was someone reading the test to me. But for me, reading the notes, because I'm a poor reader, it took too much time. And I do better. I'm very visual and very auditory. So I actually never missed a class in my entire 4.5 years I was in college. So
Wow.
I went to every single class and I asked questions and I listened. So that was mainly how I got all my information, was from listening. And I couldn't read notes. That I didn't write, I'll be honest, I didn't write any notes in my 4.5 years. I write very little notes. I just listen, because if I start writing, I get distracted. So, and then the other accommodation that I had at the community college was they could read the test to me, but this was before a technology. It was a long time ago. And so they wouldn't, in order for, I don't know, they didn't want you to cheat. And so they wouldn't give you 2 tests in order for so they wouldn't give you 2 tests. So the person reading the test, I couldn't look at it. And in order for me to auditory listen to someone, I have to look at the text. Otherwise, I can't comprehend it or I get distracted. And so I just didn't use that accommodation. But the part that I did use that was so valuable was that 1.5 times on test in a quiet environment. I took my test in a no distraction zone. And for me, that was huge. That was the part that made it where I didn't stress as much and I was able to take my time.
Well, that's a great point that you brought up about not using some of the accommodations offered to you, because sometimes people think they fight so hard to get accommodations that they have to use all of them. And sometimes you might fight hard to get it and then see that it doesn't really help you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you should continue to
use it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not helping. There's no
benefit. Well, and the other thing too is at the time, because it was so long ago, it was tapes. So I had audio tapes of textbooks, and that didn't work for me because you would have to rewind it. You couldn't find the right spot for it, and so that didn't work either. And I'll be honest, I didn't really read much in college. Like I said, I really didn't read much. The classes I was supposed to read a lot in, I didn't do well in, but yeah, that part of it, that accommodation didn't work. But I know now with Learning Ally and Bookshare, it will highlight it and read it to you at the same time, which for me, I know everyone's different, but for me, I have to look at the words and hear them, and then I got it. But so that accommodation, just with the tapes, it did not work for me. And I think the thing too is some accommodations are going to take you too much time. And like we were talking about time management, if it takes you like 10 extra hours to do something that should take you an hour and it's not working for you, you should try something else.
Yeah, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
So, what do you do for a living?
I teach preschool. So I work for the federal government. I teach for Head Start. And I was telling you when we were talking earlier, I was telling you how I actually knew when I was 10 that I wanted to teach preschool. I wrote an essay in my class. I had Mr. Scambolone. He was an amazing teacher. He did like magic tricks and everything. He was great. And so in his class, I put that I wanted to be a preschool teacher. And so that's what I studied in school. And that's what I've done for the last 20 years.
And so have you needed to do a lot of reading and writing with that career?
You know what? There's not a lot of reading and writing. I will say the writing part, because I work for the government, we do assessments on all the children. And so there is writing, but because I work for the federal government, every workplace is supposed to give you a ADA reasonable accommodations. And so I actually met with HR and I filled out a reasonable accommodations paper. And so I actually have reasonable accommodations in the workplace currently. The first time, actually, I've taught for 20 years, but this is my first year actually having reasonable accommodations.
And what do your accommodations look like?
Well, one of my accommodations is I get extra time out of the classroom to do our developmental profiles. Those are the kids' assessments. And then that's basically my main accommodation that I get, is getting that extra time away from the classroom.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And so what would you say to help parents or students getting ready to apply to college or go to college? What recommendations would you make for them?
Well, I think the first thing is to choose when your child is, or your young adult is looking for something, that they pick something that they enjoy and that they're good at, because it's not going to be easy. And so if you aren't focused on something that they know that they want to do or that they're good at, then it's going to be really challenging. And the other thing is you need to look up the school and maybe even talk to other people that you know that maybe have a learning difference, that have gone there, and how their accommodations actually work. Because some different schools have different learning centers. They're all supposed to help you, but certain schools are set up better for young adults who have dyslexia, and they have more accommodations, and also the teachers are more willing to work with them, because there's certain schools that, even though they're supposed to have the accommodation, they might not work as well with people that learn differently. And then there's also schools that are set up specifically for young adults that have learned differently. So
I actually have a list of colleges, universities that are easier for dyslexic students to thrive in, and I'd be happy to share that list with any of our viewers who would like to have that list.
Oh yeah, that would be wonderful. That'd be super helpful, because I think that is so important to have recommendations from other people.
Yeah, well, and like my son attended Landmark College in Vermont, their summer program.
Mm-hmm.
That college is completely geared towards people with dyslexia and similar learning differences. And he went from writing 4-sentence paragraphs that did not have a good flow when he got there, mm-hmm. to writing 2-page papers when he left a month later. So yeah. If he had that type of success in just a month, I can imagine, what 2 or 4 years of college there can do for a student.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and I know the community colleges too have a lot of support services, and they also have not just degree programs, they have certificated programs, which is also a good way to just focus on what you're good at and not have to do the other part that maybe you're not as successful at. So trade schools, I think, are good too, to look into, not just to be on one track that you have to go specifically to university. I think there's many more different avenues and ways to get to where you're going.
Well, and as you mentioned earlier too, when you're going to community college, you don't have to apply, you don't have to do an SAT test.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little, Mel?
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that, because I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so when I was in high school, my parents didn't want me to have to go through the SAT, because they knew that the reading, writing part I would not have done very well in. And so if you go to community college, you don't have to take the SAT at all. And you can once you get your units and you get your GPA is what they're looking for, that and you pass all your classes, you can transfer anywhere. You can go to any any four-year school. You can transfer there, which a lot of people I think maybe don't know, because it's harder to get in if you're just a freshman. But if you're going from community college, you can if you go on the right tracks. There are different tracks for you know, if you're going to UC or Cal State, and they tell you ahead of time what classes you need to take, and if you pass all them, you can just transfer, you know, easily. So,
and having gone to a private college, university, did it matter which track you were on?
No, but I will say that I met with them beforehand, and they said some of the classes transferred, but then when I got there, they changed their story. And so I think the other thing I forgot to mention is to have parent support or have some type of person that advocates for you, even when you're in college, because they had to come up with a different plan, because they told me that all these classes were transferable, where I ended up having to take just a couple of general ed classes, like a math class, and I had to take a world history class. And I think there was one other class I had to take that, because when I transferred, they said that I needed to take those. But yeah, the math class, I had tested out of math at the community college. So I didn't have to take it. And so when I transferred, I had to retake a math class. So I think that's another thing, is visiting where you're going to go if you already know where it is, and then talking to them, and then make them write it down on paper that they said that these qualify for you to transfer. But it's a little different when you go to like a private school, because I don't know, they look at it, but the UC ones, it's pretty self-explanatory, like take this class or this class, and then you can transfer.
Well, and oh, I just totally lost my train of thought. Well, a lot of times they change what the requirements are too. So
yes,
if you don't transfer quick enough, even though it was written down what the requirements were for the state colleges, it might change if you take 4 years to get to that state college.
Yes, they change it. And then the other thing too is with like early childhood classes, it's not like they're standard what the name of them is, or what the like EC whatever, they change that too. And so you have to make sure that you're taking the right courses, I guess. You know, and also, like I said, if you go and talk to the university ahead of time, make sure they write down on a piece of paper and sign it that these are the classes that you're going to take when you transfer.
Great. So what would you say to inspire our young listeners about going to college with learning differences?
I would say that you can do it, and that don't give up, and that you can, it's not going to be easy. I know that's maybe not motivational, but it's not going to be easy. But if you have a goal in mind, and this isn't just with going to college, if you have a goal in mind of something you want to accomplish, you just have to take small steps to get there. But you can get there and you can achieve your goal. So don't give up just because something maybe is challenging. And also there's always going to be people that say no to you in your life, but you have to find the yes people. You have to find the people who support you. And also, even in school, you have to find the professors that really understand you and really want to help you. And so I think just not giving up and being positive and just keep on going at it. It might take a long time. It might take longer than you think, but just keep on going, and don't give up. Don't give up just because something maybe is difficult or someone tells you, no, you can't do it. Just do it anyway, and do it 10 times better.
That's great advice. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Jess.
Yeah, my pleasure. And then we're going to have some question and answers afterwards, so people can ask you questions.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, you can ask me whatever you would like. I'm an open book, so ask me whatever question you have.
Thank you so much.